The Lumix S9 and the S5 II and S5 IIX are two fantastic cameras by Panasonic that offer a ton of great features in them. But in this video, we're going to talk about the differences between these and when I think you should buy the S9 and when you should consider buying the S5 II or the S5 IIX. First, I do want to say thank you to B&H for loaning me the S9 for purposes of doing some comparisons and testing. And I've really appreciated getting to try this out side by side with the Panasonic S5 II and the S5 IIX. So whenever you compare these side by side, the cameras are very different in terms of size and weight. The S9 has this really compact, almost vintage look to it, and there's no viewfinder on it. So this is a very basic camera with less buttons on it than the S5 II and S5 IIX as well. You have one knob less than the S5 IIX, and there's also no drive knob on the side of it. Another thing to note is this one does not have a mechanical shutter. It's electronic shutter only. So there's definitely some limitations that come into play with the S9, and we're going to keep going through those. The S5 IIX is not considered Panasonic's flagship camera, but it has so many great features. It's so ergonomic. It has a great grip. There's buttons for white balance and ISO, and there's also the button to change exposure comp on the top. Very great knob back by your thumb. There's a knob on the front as well. The drive knob for changing the photo modes. Dedicated autofocus joysticks and buttons. There's just so many buttons on this, and this has a really high quality professional feel to it. And until I got the S9, I didn't even appreciate just how ergonomic this camera actually is. Now, they both use the same battery, but there's a couple of other features we need to go through that are different on the two cameras. So the S9 only has a single SD card slot. The S5 II and S5 IIX have two card slots. And if you get the X version, you can also write directly to an SSD, which I love to do that because then you can unlock even more high quality video modes on this. So with the S9, you're going to be limited to just one SD card, which isn't going to be as good for professional work because then you don't have any redundancy with your card writing. Also on the S9, the battery and the SD card go on the bottom of it, and it can be hard to get the SD card out whenever you have this on a tripod plate, depending on the type of tripod you're using. So I wish they were able to put that SD card on a side. Also, this does not have a full-size HDMI port. It does still have the USB port for charging it, and it also does not have a headphone jack. It only has a microphone in jack on it. Also, the top of the S9 does have a hot shoe, but it won't work with the Lumix XLR interface, so you're not going to be able to run XLR microphones or headphones with this camera. I did find the video quality and photo quality to be very similar on these. They honestly looked exactly the same. Really, the S9 just blends itself as more of a travel, compact, minimal camera, and the S5 II and S5 IIX is kind of the bigger brother, more buttons, dials, and knobs, and some extra features that make it a little bit more pro-grade. Now, I also did find I didn't really like the size of the S9. I just found it wasn't super comfortable to hold. I didn't know where to put my index finger or where to put my thumb on it. And one way you can make this a little better is Surae actually has this little grip that you can get, and it puts a Arca plate on the bottom of it and also gives you an extended grip on the front. This is definitely a must buy if you get the S9 in my opinion, unless you want to have the most compact package possible. One other thing the S5 II and S5 IIX both have is they have a built-in fan on them, so they both can record indefinitely. Never had any issues with this overheating. The S9 did have a lot of issues with overheating at launch, and they actually limited the amount of recording time in 6K on this, and they were just trying to make it where it wouldn't overheat on you. But now they've actually allowed you to bypass the recording limit, but the camera can still overheat with the recording limit on if you're using a battery on the inside of it. Really, the best way to bypass the recording limit and the overheating is if you power this with external power using a dummy battery, and I have a video about that as well. So if you're trying to decide between the S9 or the S5 II or the S5 IIX, you kind of got to decide on a couple different things for your priority. If you want the smallest possible camera with the ability to build it out and rig it out a little bit more, the S9 is going to be a really great option. It pairs really well with the compact 18 to 40 millimeter lens. This one is very small whenever you don't extend it, so it just makes a really nice, small, compact footprint. But whenever you go to use the lens, you actually have to extend it, and it is going to make it a little bit bigger. The S9 also pairs really well with the Sigma 45mm f2.8 lens. I haven't gotten to use that one yet, but it's a very good size for use with this. Another thing that I did notice with the S9 is as soon as you put any of the Lumix S primes on it, the balance on it does get a little bit thrown off, especially if you're not using it with the grip. So if you want to use this with the Lumix primes, you're going to notice that the total footprint of the camera is going to get significantly larger, in which case it's really time to start thinking about getting the S5 II or the S5 IIX so that you get the viewfinder, you get the fan that's built in, you're not going to have to worry about overheating with it, the dual card slots, more knobs, more customizable buttons. Pretty much everything on these cameras is better than the S9, except for the compact size. The price on these is all over the place depending on what sales are going on. Lumix is really known for having a lot of rebates and sales on their different camera bodies and lenses. The S5 II and the S9 are pretty close in price. I think it's $200 or $300 more if you want to get the S5 II over the S9, but depending on the sale, the prices may be a little bit closer. The S5 IIX is going to be significantly more expensive because of some advanced video features and the SSD recording, but the SSD recording will save you a lot of money over buying the V90 SD card. So I do really like shooting with SSDs on this camera whenever possible. So if you're trying to decide between the two of them, ask yourself if you really want the most compact, inspiring travel camera that you can get, then the S9 is going to be a really great option. Love the size, love the weight. Just know it's not as ergonomic as the S5 II and the S5 IIX. You are going to miss the viewfinder. There's so many times when I end up holding this camera up wishing the viewfinder was on it, but the screen is good enough quality, flips out, rotates, so this is going to do a good job for you, but a viewfinder can really come in handy. So if I had to choose between the two of these, I would definitely buy the S5 II or the S5 IIX over the S9, just because of all the extra buttons, the viewfinder, the fan, the extra SD card slot. The fact that the SD cards are on the side is also huge as well. They get very similar battery life, almost the exact quality of images, but the extra quality of life features you get out of the S5 II and S5 IIX make it a way better buy, in my opinion, over the S9. One last thing I want to say, this video is not meant to dog on the S9 at all. The S9 is still a fantastic value camera that gives you amazing image quality, amazing video quality. Like, it's unfair that you can get such great quality and a full frame sensor out of a camera this size. I think I'm just used to having all the extra buttons, knobs, switches that the S5 II and S5 IIX have, and that's why for me it's hard to recommend the S9 over this. But if you're just looking for something that gets really great quality photos and videos with good autofocus, the S9 is still going to do a good job. I just think if you're in the professional world and you need some of those more advanced features, more knobs, dual card slots, the built-in fan, the S5 II and S5 IIX are really hard to beat. If you're interested in buying this camera, I do have links to buy at B&H in the description below. If you have any other questions or comments about the S9 or the S5 IIX, leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear them. Like this video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any upcoming content.